He thought he was untouchable. He thought firing me was the end of my story. But the truth, it was the beginning of his downfall. I was a loyal IT engineer, fired without warning just hours before one of the company's biggest product launches. In that moment of chaos, I realized I held the ultimate power with one click. I could destroy my boss's entire career, and I did exactly that, but not in any way anyone could have predicted. This is how I turned his own command into the weapon that cost him everything. My name is Emma Carter, and at 29, I thought I'd found my place in the tech world. Ravenwood Technologies wasn't just another corporate giant in Chicago's glittering Loop District, it was supposed to be different. The recruitment pitch 3 years ago promised innovation, collaboration, and respect for talent. What I got instead was a masterclass in corporate politics and the slow realization that competence could make you a target. I was the sole systems engineer with full administrative access to our most critical infrastructure, the live feed system that connected us to Meridian Financial, our biggest client worth $2.5 million annually. It wasn't a position I'd sought out aggressively. I'd earned it through countless nights debugging code, architecting fail-safes, and being the only one willing to learn the labyrinthine legacy systems everyone else avoided. The COO, Patricia Wells, had personally entrusted me with this responsibility after the previous admin had spectacularly botched a routine update, causing a 12-hour outage that nearly cost us the contract. She'd looked me in the eye that day and said, "Emma, you're the only one I trust with this. Don't let me down." I never did. Not once in 18 months. But trust, I learned, could be a weapon in the wrong hands. Mark Harrison joined as our department head 6 months ago, bringing with him the kind of toxic energy that poisoned everything it touched. Mid-40s, silver-haired, with the practiced smile of someone who'd climbed the corporate ladder by stepping on fingers rather than rungs. He wore his Harvard MBA-like armor and wielded his previous experience at Fortune 500 companies like a sword, cutting down anyone who dared challenge his vision for the department. From day one, Mark hated that I reported directly to Patricia for all Meridian-related matters. He saw it as a crack in his authority, a reminder that despite his title, there were parts of his kingdom he couldn't control. The passive-aggressive emails started immediately. Going forward, all system decisions should flow through proper channels. The proper channel being him, naturally. I watched him systematically dismantle the careers of 2 senior engineers who'd questioned his decisions. First came the micromanagement, then the impossible deadlines, followed by public humiliation in team meetings for failing to meet said deadlines. Both resigned within 3 months. Mark would always say the same thing afterward. Not everyone is cut out for a high-performance environment. The tension had been building for weeks. Mark had been pushing for a complete restructuring that would give him sole oversight of all critical systems. Patricia had been resistant, but Mark was persuasive, especially with the CEO who loved his cost-cutting proposals and aggressive timelines. Last Tuesday, I'd sent Mark a routine risk assessment about the upcoming Meridian product launch, a new trading platform that would process millions in transactions daily. The launch was scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. sharp. I'd highlighted 3 critical dependencies that needed careful monitoring and suggested we have a backup admin on standby. His response was typical Mark. "Stop creating problems where none exist. The system has been stable for months. Focus on your actual job instead of fear-mongering." I'd learned not to argue. I simply forwarded my concerns to Patricia with a polite note that I'd keep monitoring the situation. Mark must have seen that email. In this world of corporate surveillance, nothing stayed private for long. Thursday morning, I arrived at 7:30 a.m. as usual, coffee in hand, ready for the pre-launch preparations. My desk sat in the corner of the 3rd floor, surrounded by the gentle hum of servers and the click of keyboards. I loved that sound. It meant things were working. Systems were running. The digital heart of the company was beating steadily. I pulled up the Meridian dashboard, watching the green status indicators pulse rhythmically. Everything was perfect. The load balancers were operating at optimal capacity. The redundancy systems were online, and the data streams were flowing smoothly. I ran through my checklist one more time. documenting each verification in our audit system. But something felt off. The office was quieter than usual. My teammates were avoiding eye contact, burying themselves in their screens with unusual intensity. Sarah, who usually stopped by for our morning chat about her kids' soccer games, walked past without a word. At 8:45 a.m., I noticed Mark's office blinds were drawn unusual for someone who liked to survey his domain. Through the gap beneath his door, I could see shadows moving, multiple people inside. The muffled voices carried an edge of urgency. I turned back to my screens, a cold weight settling in my stomach. In the corporate world, closed-door meetings before 9 a.m. meant someone's head was about to roll. I just didn't realize it would be mine, or that Mark was about to hand me the very weapon I'd need to destroy him. At 9:20 a.m., Mark's office door swung open. He emerged with the purposeful stride of an executioner who'd just sharpened his axe. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of HR Director Janet Phillips shuffling papers, her face carefully neutral. My blood turned to ice. Mark walked directly to my desk, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished floor like a countdown. He didn't sit. He didn't soften his approach with small talk. He simply stood there, looking down at me with barely concealed satisfaction. "Shut down your workstation," he said, his voice carrying across the silent office. "Effective immediately." The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. I felt every eye in the office turn toward us, though no one dared look directly. My fingers froze over the keyboard as my mind raced through the implications. "I'm sorry." "What?" I managed, keeping my voice steady despite the chaos erupting in my thoughts.
"You heard me. Shut down your workstation. Log out of all systems. This is a direct order."
I glanced at my screens. The Meridian dashboard still glowed green. The product launch was in less than 2 hours. Shutting down my workstation wouldn't just log me out. It would terminate all active connections to the live feed system, the system I alone had access to, the system that needed constant monitoring during the launch. "Mark," I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, "the Meridian launch is at 11 a.m. If I shut down now, the live feed connection will terminate. It takes at least 3 hours to properly reinitialize with all the security protocols." "I didn't ask for your opinion," he cut me off, his voice rising slightly. "I gave you a direct order. Shut it down." My mind was screaming. This was insane. He couldn't possibly understand what he was asking, or maybe he did. And this was his plan all along: create a crisis, blame me for it, justify his restructuring proposal. "I need this in writing," I said, opening my email. My fingers moved quickly, typing out a message to Mark with HR copied. "Per your verbal instruction at 9:22 a.m., I am to immediately shut down my workstation. Please confirm this order. Note, this action will terminate the Meridian live feed connection approximately 90 minutes before their product launch." I hit send and looked up at him, his jaw clenched. "I don't have time for your games. Emma, this is a direct verbal order from your superior. Are you refusing to comply?" The magic words. Refusing a direct order was grounds for immediate termination with cause. No severance, no unemployment benefits. He'd boxed me in perfectly, or so he thought. "I need to hear you say it one more time," I said, pulling up our company's audit log system. "For the record, you want me to shut down my workstation immediately, understanding that this will disconnect the Meridian live feed system." His eyes flashed with irritation. "Yes, immediately. How many times do I need to repeat myself?" I typed his words directly into the audit log, time-stamped at 9:24 a.m. Then I pulled up the command prompt. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for one last second. "Mark, this will cause—" "Do it now, or security will escort you out." I saw Tom from security standing by the elevator, trying to look casual. They'd planned this down to the last detail, everything except the consequences of what they were asking me to do. I executed the shutdown command, one by one. My screens went dark. The Meridian dashboard vanished. The connection status indicators turned red in the system logs. The live feed that had been running continuously for 18 months came to an abrupt halt. "Good," Mark said, satisfaction dripping from his voice. Now pack your things. Your employment here is terminated. Effective immediately. HR will email you the details." The words should have devastated me. 3 years of my life, gone in an instant. But as I placed my personal items in a box, a coffee mug, a small cactus, a photo from the company picnic where we'd all looked so happy, I felt strangely calm. "Can I ask why?" I said, not because I didn't know, but because I wanted witnesses to hear his answer. "Performance issues," he said smoothly. "Failure to adapt to new management structures. It's all in your file." A file that didn't exist until this morning. No doubt. I nodded, picked up my box, and stood. Mark stepped back, probably expecting tears or pleas. Instead, I looked him directly in the eye. "I've complied with your direct order to shut down my workstation," I said clearly. "This has been logged in the audit system at 9:24 a.m., 93 minutes before the Meridian launch. I hope you have a backup plan." For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by his usual arrogance. "That's no longer your concern. Security will escort you out." As Tom walked me to the elevator, I passed Patricia's office. She was in a meeting, unaware of what had just transpired, unaware that in approximately 90 minutes, her biggest client would attempt to launch a product that no longer had a connection to our systems. The elevator doors closed on my career at Ravenwood, but I knew this wasn't the end. Mark had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd given me a direct order, and I'd followed it to the letter. Sometimes the best revenge is simply giving people exactly what they ask for. The September air hit my face as I exited Ravenwood's gleaming lobby, box in hand, dignity intact. Instead of heading to my car, I walked across the street to Cafe Nero, the little independent coffee shop where I'd spent countless lunch breaks. The owner, Marcus, raised an eyebrow as I walked in with my box of belongings at 9:45 a.m. "Early lunch?" he asked. "Something like that," I replied, settling into the corner booth with a perfect view of Ravenwood's main entrance. "Can I get a cappuccino, actually? Make it a double." I pulled out my personal laptop and checked the time. 10:05 a.m. 55 minutes until the Meridian launch. I knew their CEO, Richard Brennan, was probably already in their war room, surrounded by executives and tech teams, ready to flip the switch on their revolutionary trading platform, the platform that promised to process transactions in microseconds, the platform that relied entirely on our live feed system to function. My phone buzzed. Sarah from my team. "What the hell just happened? Mark's acting like everything's normal." I didn't respond. There would be time for explanations later. At 10:30 a.m., I watched Mark exit the building, probably heading to his usual pre-meeting coffee run at the expensive place 2 blocks over. He walked with that same confident stride, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly, still playing the big shot, still thinking he'd won. 10:45 a.m. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see increased activity on the 3rd floor, people walking faster, clustering around desks, pointing at screens, the first signs of panic. 10:50 a.m. Mark returned, coffee in hand, still oblivious. He strolled through the lobby like a king surveying his domain. I sipped my cappuccino and waited. 11 a.m. 0 hour. The transformation was almost instantaneous. Even from across the street, I could see the shift in energy. What started as confused looks quickly escalated to frantic movement. People running between cubicles, phones ringing nonstop. Someone, I think it was James from Network Ops, actually pressed his face against the window, looking down at the street as if the answer might be written on the pavement. 11:07 a.m. A black town car screeched to a halt in front of the building. Patricia Wells emerged, her usually perfect composure cracking as she practically ran toward the entrance. She never ran, in 3 years. I'd never seen her move faster than a brisk walk. 11:15 a.m. 2 more cars arrived. I recognized Meridian's legal team. They had a very distinctive way of moving, like sharks who'd scented blood. Richard Brennan himself stepped out of the second car, his face a mask of controlled fury. My phone exploded with messages, former colleagues, friends from other departments. Even the janitor had my number somehow. I turned it to silent and ordered a sandwich. This was going to be a long show. 11:28 a.m. I saw Mark through the windows, being escorted, not walking, being escorted toward what I knew was the executive conference room. His body language had completely changed. The confident stride was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like a stumble. Sarah texted again. The Meridian platform crashed at launch. They're saying it's a total system failure. Billions in transactions frozen. CNN just picked up the story. I pulled up CNN's business page on my laptop. Sure enough, breaking major trading platform fails at launch. Millions in transactions halted. The article was brief but damning. Sources claimed a critical connection failure had caused the entire platform to become non-responsive at the exact moment of launch. Trading had been suspended. The SEC was asking questions. Meridian's stock price had dropped 12% in 17 minutes. 11:45 a.m. My phone rang. Patricia Wells. "Emma, where are you?" Her voice was strained but controlled. "Across the street, Cafe Nero. We need you here, now." "I'm afraid I can't do that. Patricia, I've been terminated. Mark made that very clear." A pause. "Emma, please. The entire Meridian system is down. You need someone with administrative access to restore the live feed connection." I finished. "I understand, but I was given a direct order to shut down my workstation and was terminated immediately after. I have no authorization to access company systems." "This is a crisis." "Yes, it is. Perhaps you should ask Mark about his backup plan. He seemed very confident when he ordered me to shut down the system 90 minutes before the launch." Another pause. Longer this time. "He did what?" "It's all in the audit logs. 9:24 a.m. His direct order. Despite my warnings about the Meridian launch, I have the email requesting written confirmation, though he refused to provide it. I'm sure HR has a copy." I heard muffled voices in the background, sharp and urgent. "Stay where you are," Patricia said finally. "Just stay where you are." 12:10 p.m. The Blacktown cars hadn't left. If anything, more had arrived. I recognized our legal team's vehicles, and was that the CEO's Tesla? David Reynolds rarely came to the office, preferring to work from his estate in Winnetka. But here he was, practically running into the building. The sandwich shop was filling with the lunch crowd, but I kept my spot by the window. This was better than any show I'd ever watched. Mark Harrison, the untouchable Harvard MBA, the man who'd systematically destroyed careers just to prove he could, was finally facing the consequences of his own arrogance. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Meridian's stock had dropped 23%. Trading remained suspended. The SEC had released a statement about investigating the systematic failure. I opened my audit log screenshot, the one I'd had the foresight to capture before my system went down. There it was, time-stamped and undeniable Mark Harrison's direct order to shut down the system, despite clear warning about the consequences. He'd thought he was untouchable. He'd thought firing me would cement his power. Instead, he'd pulled the pin on his own grenade. I ordered another cappuccino and settled in to watch the aftermath unfold. At 12:45 p.m., Patricia called again. "Emma, we need you in conference room A, now." "I'm terminated, remember? You're being temporarily reinstated as a consultant. Please, the lawyers say we need you here." I took my time finishing my cappuccino, then walked across the street. Security looked confused when I entered, but Patricia was waiting in the lobby, her usually immaculate appearance showing signs of stress, a strand of hair out of place. Her blazer slightly wrinkled. "Thank you for coming," she said, leading me to the elevator. "This is a disaster." "I tried to warn him," I said simply. Conference room A was a war zone. Papers scattered across the mahogany table, laptops everywhere, coffee cups abandoned and cold. At the head of the table sat David Reynolds, our CEO, his face granite. To his right, Richard Brennan from Meridian, looking like he wanted to strangle someone. Legal teams flanked both sides. HR huddled in the corner, and there, at the far end, sat Mark, somehow looking both defiant and deflated. "Ms. Carter," David Reynolds said, "thank you for joining us. We need to understand exactly what happened this morning." I remained standing. "Where would you like me to start?" "From the beginning," Richard Brennan interjected, his voice ice. "My platform is dead, 500 million in transactions frozen. The SEC is so far up my ass I can taste their cologne. Someone's going to explain how this happened, or I'm suing everyone in this room for breach of contract." Mark shifted in his seat. "This is a technical failure. Emma was responsible for maintaining—" "Stop," I said, pulling out my phone. "Let's look at the facts." I connected my phone to the presentation screen. The audit log appeared, clear as day. 9:22 a.m. Mark Harrison approaches my desk and orders me to shut down my workstation. I warn him this will disconnect the Meridian live feed. He insists. "That's taken out of context," Mark started. I swiped to the next screenshot. 9:23 a.m. I send this email requesting written confirmation of the order, explicitly stating the consequences. Mark refuses to provide written confirmation but verbally insists I proceed. "She was being terminated for performance issues." "What performance issues?" Patricia interrupted. "Emma has had stellar reviews for 3 years. I personally commended her work last month." Mark's face reddened. "She was insubordinate, constantly questioning decisions." "You mean warning you about risks?" I pulled up another document. "Like this risk assessment I sent you Tuesday about the Meridian launch, the one where I identified 3 critical dependencies and suggested backup coverage." Richard Brennan leaned forward. He received a risk assessment and ignored it. His response was, and I quote, "Stop creating problems where none exist. Focus on your actual job instead of fear-mongering." The room went silent. David Reynolds's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. "But here's the interesting part," I continued, pulling up the system architecture diagram. "The Meridian live feed system requires continuous connection to maintain synchronization. Once disconnected, it needs a full reinitialization sequence that takes approximately 3 hours minimum, assuming all security protocols are followed." 3 hours. Richard Brennan stood up. "You're telling me this idiot ordered you to disconnect a system that takes 3 hours to restore, 90 minutes before my launch?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Mark attempted damage control. I didn't understand the technical implications. "You didn't understand." Patricia's voice could have frozen fire. "You're the department head. You've been in charge for 6 months. How could you not understand our most critical system?" She should have explained better. "I tried," I said, pulling up one more email. 17 times in 6 months. I've sent Mark detailed explanations about the Meridian system. He's responded to exactly 0 of them. Our legal counsel, Jennifer Wright, spoke up. "Ms. Carter, do you have documentation of Mr. Harrison's order to shut down despite your warnings? Audio log from my desk phone, email trail, and witness testimonies from at least 12 team members who heard the exchange." "This is a setup," Mark sputtered. "She deliberately sabotaged." "How?" I asked calmly. "By following your direct order, you threatened to have security escort me out if I didn't comply immediately. Should I have refused a direct order from my superior?" Jennifer Wright was taking rapid notes. "Mr. Harrison, did you or did you not order Miss Carter to shut down her workstation, knowing there was a product launch in 90 minutes?" Mark's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Richard Brennan slammed his hand on the table. "I want him fired. Today. And I want Emma rehired with a raise and an apology. Otherwise, Meridian is pulling our entire contract and suing for the 500 million in damages we're facing." "You can't threaten," Mark started. "I just did," Brennan said. "Your incompetence cost me potentially billions. The SEC is investigating me because your department head is a power-hungry moron who fired the only person who knew how to run the system." David Reynolds stood. "Mark, You're suspended immediately pending investigation. Clean out your desk. Security will escort you. This is wrongful termination. No, Jennifer Wright said. What you did to Ms. Carter this morning was wrongful termination. What's happening to you is consequence management. Mark stood, his face cycling through various shades of red and purple. He looked at me, and I saw it in his eyes, the realization that he'd orchestrated his own downfall. You planned this, he whispered. No, Mark, I replied quietly. I just gave you exactly what you ordered. You planned this the moment you decided competence was a threat to your authority. As security led him out, I turned to the room. Now, about restoring the Meridian connection. I'll need full system access, a team of 3 engineers, and about 2.5 hours. But first, we need to discuss my consulting rate. Patricia actually smiled. Name your price. Triple my previous hourly rate, plus a written apology from the company, and guarantee that my employment termination this morning is completely expunged from all records. Done, David Reynolds said immediately. I nodded and headed for the door. I'll be at my desk, sorry. My former desk in 5 minutes. Have someone clear out Mark's office. I'll need a quiet space to work. As I left, I heard Richard Brennan say, That woman just saved your asses. You better make sure she never leaves again. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in covering your ass. While I worked on restoring the Meridian connection, which I accomplished in 2 hours and 17 minutes, 13 minutes faster than promised, I also quietly built my insurance policy. First, I submitted a formal request to HR for all emails between Mark and other employees over the past 6 months. For the investigation, I explained to Janet Phillips, who was more than happy to comply given the lawsuit breathing down their necks. What I found was a goldmine of systematic abuse, questionable decisions, and at least 3 instances of him overriding security protocols to meet his arbitrary deadlines. Sarah helped me compile everything. Jesus, Emma, look at this, she said, pulling up an email thread. He told Kevin to bypass the security audit on the Morrison account to speed up deployment. Download everything, I said. Every email, every Slack message, every document. Isn't this? It's evidence for the investigation that legal requested, I said, which was technically true. Jennifer Wright had asked for any documentation relevant to Mark's management practices. The Meridian system came back online at 3:37 p.m. Friday afternoon. Richard Brennan personally called to thank me and mentioned something about their board wanting to discuss a strategic partnership with whoever would be running our department going forward. But I wasn't done yet. That weekend, I worked from home. Using my reinstated access to dig deeper, Mark had been careful, but not careful enough. I found his shadow folders, the ones he thought were private. Performance improvement plans for half the department, all dated for next month. He'd been planning a massacre, clearing out anyone who might challenge his vision. More interesting was his correspondence with a competitor, TechForge Solutions. Nothing explicitly illegal, but enough dancing around the edges to raise eyebrows. Mentions of future opportunities and bringing valuable insights when the time was right. I documented everything meticulously. Timestamps, metadata, chain of custody, all preserved according to our legal department's evidence protocols. Monday morning arrived with a fury of activity. The SEC investigation was in full swing, and they wanted documentation. Lots of documentation. Jennifer Wright called me into her office at 8 a.m. sharp. Emma, we need everything you have on the Meridian incident. I handed her a USB drive, audit logs, emails, system documentation, and a complete timeline. She plugged it in, scanning through the files. Her eyes widened. This is comprehensive. There's more, I said, producing a second drive. This contains evidence of systematic security violations, potential corporate espionage, and hostile workplace practices dating back 6 months. Jennifer stared at me. Corporate espionage. I showed her the TechForge emails. You'll want to have cybersecurity audit his personal devices. I'd bet my consulting fee he's been copying proprietary information. How did you? I didn't do anything unauthorized, I said carefully. Everything here was accessible through normal channels during the restoration process and the subsequent investigation. I just happened to be very thorough. She nodded slowly. Very thorough indeed. Patricia called me to her office that afternoon. The board met this morning, she said without preamble. Mark's termination is official. We're also pursuing legal action for gross negligence and breach of fiduciary duty. Good. They've also approved a new position, Director of Systems Reliability. It comes with a 40% raise and direct reporting to me. Interested. I pretended to consider it. I want Mark's office. It's being cleaned out as we speak. And I want to rebuild the team. My picks. No interference. Done. One more thing, I said. A written guarantee that no one can override security protocols without documentation and dual approval. Patricia smiled. Already drafted. The board insisted after seeing your evidence. Tuesday brought unexpected satisfaction. Tom from security, who'd escorted me out just days earlier, stopped by my new office, Mark's former corner suite, with its panoramic city views. Hey, Emma, I owe you an apology. I was just doing my job, but no apology needed. Tom, you were professional and respectful. That's all anyone can ask. He shifted uncomfortably. You should know. Mark tried to get into the building last night, said he forgot some personal items. We turned him away, but he seemed desperate. Interesting. Thanks for letting me know. I pulled up the access logs. Mark's keycard had attempted entry at 11:47 p.m. Monday night, then again at 2:15 a.m., and once more at 5:20 a.m. Someone was panicking about what might be discovered in his abandoned files. Wednesday afternoon, Jennifer Wright knocked on my door with a grim expression. You were right about the personal devices. It found gigabytes of proprietary code on his personal laptop, customer lists, architectural diagrams, even the Meridian integration specifications. TechForge. We think so. The FBI is now involved. The FBI? Mark hadn't just destroyed his career, he'd potentially destroyed his life. All because he couldn't stand the thought of someone else having authority he couldn't control. Thursday morning, I got a text from an unknown number. You destroyed me. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He'd destroyed himself the moment he chose power over competence, ego over expertise. Sarah knocked and entered with coffee. Did you hear Mark's wife filed for divorce? Apparently, the FBI showing up at their house was the last straw. I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. She didn't deserve to be collateral damage in Mark's power games. Also, Sarah continued, the team wanted me to give you this. She handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a coffee mug with "World's Most Thorough System Admin" printed on it. Very funny, I said, but I was smiling. We figured anyone who could take down Mark Harrison with his own stupidity deserved a trophy. That evening, I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The office felt different now. The oppressive atmosphere was lifting. People were laughing again, staying to collaborate instead of fleeing at 5 p.m. sharp. I pulled up the Meridian dashboard one more time, all green lights, everything flowing smoothly. The system was stable, secure, and properly managed. My phone buzzed with an email from Patricia. Excellent work on the Morrison account recovery. The client specifically mentioned your thoroughness. P.O.S. Legal says Mark is looking at potential criminal charges. Your documentation was instrumental. I leaned back in my chair, Mark's former chair, and looked out at the Chicago skyline. The city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing someone working late, building something, protecting something, or maybe just finishing up their day. Mark had thought power meant crushing anyone who might threaten your position. He'd learned too late that real power comes from competence, from being the person others trust when everything goes wrong. Friday morning, 1 week after the disaster, David Reynolds called an emergency all-hands meeting. The entire company gathered in the main conference hall at 10 a.m. sharp. The atmosphere was electric with rumors and speculation. I'll be direct, David began, his voice carrying across the room. "We nearly lost our biggest client last week due to gross incompetence and a fundamental breakdown in our management structure. This cannot and will not happen again." He clicked to the first slide, a timeline of the Meridian incident. At 9:24 a.m. last Friday, a critical system was shut down against all protocols, 90 minutes before a major client launch. This decision cost us nearly $3 million in penalties and almost destroyed a relationship worth $30 million over the next decade. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "However," David continued, "this crisis revealed something important. It showed us who truly understands our systems and who's been protecting our infrastructure despite management obstacles." The next slide appeared, "Restructuring for reliability. Effective immediately. No system-critical decision can be made without documented approval from at least 2 authorized personnel. Any override of security protocols requires CEO or COO approval, and we're creating a new position, Chief Reliability Officer, reporting directly to the board." Patricia took the microphone. "We're also implementing mandatory technical competency assessments for all management positions. You cannot manage what you don't understand." Someone from the back called out, "What about Mark Harrison?" David's expression hardened. "Mr. Harrison's employment was terminated for cause. The matter is now with law enforcement. That's all I'll say on that subject." After the meeting, Patricia pulled me aside. "There's another meeting, smaller, conference room A, 2 p.m. At 2 p.m., I walked into a room containing David Reynolds, Patricia Wells, Jennifer Wright, Richard Brennan via video conference, and 3 board members I recognized but had never met. "Ms. Carter," David began, "we need to discuss the full scope of what you uncovered." Jennifer Wright spread out printed emails across the table. "Your documentation revealed systematic issues going back months. The TechForge connection alone could have cost us millions in stolen IP. The FBI estimates Mark copied over 200 gigabytes of proprietary data," Patricia added. "Without your evidence, we never would have known." Richard Brennan's voice came through the speakers. "Emma, I'll be blunt. Meridian wants to poach you. Name your price." David's face darkened. "She's not available." "Everyone's available for the right price," Brennan countered. "Gentlemen," I interrupted, "I appreciate the interest, but I have unfinished business here. This department needs rebuilding from the ground up." Board member Margaret Chen leaned forward. "What would you need to accomplish that?" I'd been preparing for this question. "Full autonomy in hiring decisions, budget increase of 30% for training and infrastructure, and a commitment that no non-technical executive can override technical decisions without proper review." "Done," Margaret said immediately. "What else?" "I want to implement a rotation program. Every systems engineer spends 1 month a year working directly with a client team. They need to understand the real-world impact of their work." "Approved." Richard Brennan laughed through the speaker. "You sure you don't want to work for me? I like how you think." "Thanks, but I just got the corner office. I'd like to enjoy it for a while." The meeting continued for another hour, discussing legal ramifications, new protocols, and the ongoing FBI investigation. As we wrapped up, Jennifer Wright pulled me aside. "Emma, I need you to know something. Mark's lawyer reached out. He's claiming you set him up, that you deliberately sabotaged the system to frame him." I met her eyes steadily. "I followed a direct order from my superior. Every action I took is documented and time-stamped. If he wants to argue that following his explicit instructions constitutes sabotage, I welcome that discussion in court." She smiled slightly. "That's what I told them. They declined to pursue it further." That evening, I was packing up when an unexpected visitor appeared in my doorway. Mark's former assistant, Linda, stood there with a banker's box. "These were in Mark's personal storage," she said. "I thought you should see them." Inside were performance reviews, my performance reviews all marked up in red ink. Comments like, "too independent," "questions authority," and "lacks corporate vision" filled the margins. None of these had ever been filed with HR. "He was building a case," Linda said quietly. "He'd been planning to fire you for months. The Meridian launch was just his opportunity. Why are you showing me this? Linda's face stiffened. He treated my friend the same way at his last job 2 years ago. Her life fell apart within months after he ruined her career. When I learned what he attempted with you, I couldn't just keep quiet. The weight of that revelation hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about power or control. Mark had a pattern of destroying lives. Does Jennifer Wright know about this? She does now. I gave her everything this morning, including emails from his previous company that I acquired. I raised an eyebrow. His assistant passwords haven't changed in 3 years, Linda said with a shrug. He never thought the help would fight back. After Linda left, I sat in my office as darkness fell over Chicago. The city lights began their nightly show, but my mind was elsewhere. Mark hadn't just been a bad manager or a corporate climber. He was a predator who used his position to destroy people who threatened his ego. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Not Mark this time. The area code was different. Thank you for stopping him. You don't know me. But he destroyed my career at TechCorp 3 years ago. Seeing him finally face consequences gives me hope. Then another. I worked under Mark at his first company. Lost everything when he sabotaged my project. Thank you for what you did. And another. My sister was one of his victims. She never recovered. Thank you for standing up to him. I realized then that my revenge wasn't just personal. It was justice for all the people who couldn't fight back, who didn't have the evidence, who were crushed under the weight of his systematic cruelty. Monday would bring new challenges. The department needed rebuilding. Trust needed restoration, and systems needed fortification. But tonight, sitting in what used to be Mark's throne room, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. He'd thought he was untouchable, protected by his title and his Harvard MBA and his corporate armor, but he'd forgotten the most important rule of technology: the system admin always has the last word. And sometimes, that word is shutdown. 3 weeks had passed since the Meridian incident. The department was running smoothly under my leadership, and the toxic atmosphere Mark had cultivated was finally dissipating. Then Jennifer Wright called an urgent meeting at 8 a.m. sharp on Tuesday morning. The FBI investigation has expanded, she announced to the assembled group myself. Patricia, David Reynolds, and 2 federal agents I'd never seen before. Mark Harrison's activities go deeper than we initially thought. Agent Sarah Coleman, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, opened a folder. Ms. Carter, your documentation revealed financial irregularities we need to discuss. Were you aware that Mr. Harrison was approving vendor contracts with shell companies? I pulled out my laptop. I suspected something when I was compiling the evidence. 3 vendors stood out, all registered within 6 months of Mark joining Ravenwood, all with minimal digital footprints, all receiving payments just under the threshold requiring board approval. Total amount, Agent Coleman asked. $870,000 over 6 months. David Reynolds went pale. He was embezzling. It appears so, Agent Coleman confirmed. The shell companies trace back to accounts in the Cayman Islands. We believe Mr. Harrison was preparing for his exit, using Ravenwood as a piggy bank while he negotiated with TechForge. Patricia slammed her hand on the table. That son of a... There's more, I interrupted, pulling up another document. Remember how Mark insisted on upgrading our backup systems? He chose the vendors, overrode procurement protocols, and rushed implementation. So, those backup systems have backdoors, hidden access points that would allow external entry into our network. I found them during my security audit last week. The second agent, a younger man named Thompson, leaned forward. You're saying he installed backdoors for TechForge? The evidence suggests that was the plan. Give TechForge access to our systems, our client data, everything. They could monitor our operations in real time, anticipate our moves, steal our clients. The room fell silent. This wasn't just incompetence or embezzlement anymore. This was corporate espionage on a scale that could have destroyed Ravenwood entirely. Jennifer Wright spoke first. Emma, I need every piece of evidence you have, every document, every trail, every suspicious transaction. I handed her a drive. It's all here. 43 suspicious transactions, 17 unauthorized system modifications, and a pattern of communication with TechForge that coincides with every major security change he implemented. Agent Coleman stood. Mr. Reynolds, we're upgrading this to a federal corporate espionage investigation. Mr. Harrison is looking at 20 to 30 years if convicted. After the agents left, David turned to me. How did we miss this? He was careful, I said. Small moves, gradual changes, always just under the radar. If he hadn't gotten greedy and tried to fire me, he might have succeeded. But why target you specifically? I pulled up one final document. Because I was the only one who couldn't be locked out of the Meridian system. Patricia had insisted on that after the previous admin failure. Mark needed me gone to complete his plan. He was planning to cause a massive failure during the next Meridian update, offer to bring in TechForge as emergency support, and facilitate a hostile takeover of the contract. Patricia's face was stone. He was going to sabotage us and ride in as the hero with his new company. Exactly. That afternoon, news broke. Tech executive arrested in major corporate espionage case, screamed the headlines. Mark's photo a mugshot now. Not the polished corporate headshot was everywhere. My phone rang. It was Richard Brennan. Emma, I just heard. Holy shit. It's been a day. A day you just saved your company from complete destruction. If he'd succeeded in giving TechForge that access, Meridian would have been next. I finished. Your data, your algorithms, everything. I owe you dinner. Hell, I owe you a yacht. When this is over, Meridian wants to formalize a partnership with your team specifically. Ironclad contracts, no middlemen. You running the technical side. I'll consider it. After hanging up, I found Sarah waiting in my office. The whole company's talking, she said. Maintenance staff, cafeteria workers, everyone. They're calling you the woman who took down Goliath. I didn't take him down. He took himself down. I just documented it. Sarah laughed. Right. You just happened to document everything perfectly, preserve all the evidence, and hand the FBI a case wrapped in a bow. I'm thorough, I said simply. Thoroughly badass, Sarah muttered. That evening, as I prepared to leave, Linda appeared again. Thought you should know, she said quietly. Mark's wife called me. She wanted to thank you. Thank me. She found things on his home computer, messages to other women, hidden accounts, plans to leave her with nothing once he secured his position at TechForge. Your investigation didn't just save the company, it saved her from financial ruin. Thursday brought the final piece of the puzzle. Jennifer Wright called me to her office where a settlement document waited. The board wants to ensure you're properly compensated for uncovering this conspiracy, she said. They're offering a one-time bonus of $200,000, plus stock options, plus a guaranteed contract as chief security architect for 5 years. I read through the terms carefully. I want one addition. Name it. A fund for employees who experience workplace harassment or sabotage, named after Mark's victims. Let something good come from this. Jennifer smiled. I'll have it drafted today. Friday afternoon at 4:30 p.m., I stood at my office window, watching as federal agents carried boxes from our building evidence for Mark's trial. Each box represented another nail in his coffin, another piece of the case he'd built against himself through his own arrogance and greed. My phone buzzed with a news update. Harrison denied bail, deemed flight risk. Then a text from Patricia. Board meeting Monday. They want to discuss your future. Big things coming. I turned back to my desk where the Meridian dashboard glowed steady green. The system was secure, the company was safe, and Mark Harrison was facing decades in federal prison. He'd walked into the office 3 weeks ago thinking he was untouchable, that firing me would clear his path to millions in stolen data and embezzled funds. Instead, he'd handed me the weapon I needed to expose not just his incompetence, but his crimes. The best revenge isn't always served cold. Sometimes it's served with a federal warrant and a one-way ticket to a concrete cell. I shut down my workstation properly, with all protocols followed, and headed home. Justice had been delivered. wrapped in audit logs, and tied with a bow of federal charges. Mark thought he was playing chess while everyone else played checkers. He never realized I wasn't playing at all. I was just documenting the game. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m., but I arrived early, settling into my office to review the quarterly reports one more time. The Meridian system had been running flawlessly for a month, and our other clients had noticed the improvement in service quality. At 8:45 a.m., Patricia knocked and entered. "Ready for this?" "Ready for what?" "Exactly." "Your message was cryptic." She smiled. "You'll see." The boardroom was fuller than expected. All 12 board members were present, along with David Reynolds, Patricia, and surprisingly, Richard Brennan via video link from New York. Margaret Liu, the board chair, stood. "Emma, we've called this meeting to discuss a significant restructuring of our technology division." My stomach tightened. Restructuring rarely meant good things. "The events of the past month have shown us a critical truth," she continued. "Technical expertise cannot be subordinate to management politics. It's a vulnerability we can't afford." David Reynolds took over. "Effective immediately. We're creating a new C-level position, Chief Technology Risk Officer. This role will have veto power over any technical decision that could impact system security or client services. They'll report directly to the board, not to management." Patricia was practically glowing. "The position comes with a base salary of $350,000, plus performance bonuses, stock options, and a seat on the executive committee." And Richard Brennan added from the screen, "Meridian has agreed to contribute an additional $50,000 annually to the role, given that you'll be overseeing our integration as well." Margaret Liu leaned forward. "Emma, we're offering you the position. You've proven that you not only understand our systems, but that you'll protect them regardless of political pressure." I sat back, absorbing the moment. 6 weeks ago, I'd been escorted from the building with a cardboard box. Now they were offering me a position that would fundamentally change the power structure of the company. "I accept," I said, "on one condition." The board members exchanged glances. "Which is?" "The Employee Protection Fund we discussed. I want it fully funded and operational within 30 days, and I want to personally oversee its distribution." "Done," Margaret said immediately. "Anything else?" "Yes, I want Sarah Martinez promoted to Director of Systems Reliability. She's ready, and I trust her completely." "Also done." As the meeting concluded, and hands were shaken, Patricia walked me back to my office, my current office, as I'd apparently be moving to the executive floor next week. "You know," she said, "Mark's trial starts next month. You'll have to testify."
I know.
"Are you ready for that?" I thought about it. He made his choices. Every fraudulent transaction, every backdoor he installed, every career he tried to destroy, those were all choices. I'm just providing the consequences. Tuesday morning brought unexpected news. Jennifer Wright called to inform me that Mark had attempted a plea bargain. He's offering to provide information about TechForge's broader conspiracy in exchange for reduced charges, she explained. "And the FBI isn't interested. They have everything they need thanks to your documentation. He's looking at 25 to 30 years, minimum." That afternoon, I was cleaning out my desk in preparation for the move when I found something tucked behind a drawer, a photo from last year's holiday party. The whole team was there, including Mark, smiling and raising champagne glasses. He'd given a speech that night about building something special together. I studied his face in the photo, even then, even while smiling and toasting. There was something cold in his eyes, a calculating look that suggested everyone around him was either a tool or an obstacle. I dropped the photo in the shredder. Wednesday was my last day in the corner office. Sarah had already started moving her things in, excited about her promotion. "I still can't believe it," she said. 6 weeks ago, we were all terrified of Mark. Now you're C-suite. I'm director, and he's in federal custody." "Believe it," I said. "And remember, he did this to himself. All we did was refuse to be victims." Thursday evening, I got an unexpected call. It was Mark's wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, Catherine. "I wanted to thank you personally," she said, "not just for exposing his crimes, but for doing it with such precision. The FBI told me your documentation is why I'll be able to recover the money he hid." "You don't need to thank me. I was protecting the company." "Maybe, but you also protected people like me, women who trusted the wrong man and almost lost everything because of it." Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. I stood in my new office on the executive floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago. The desk was solid mahogany, the chairs were Italian leather, and the coffee machine was top of the line. But the best part was the sign being installed on the door, "Emma Carter, Chief Technology Risk Officer." My phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it, then noticed it was from the Federal Detention Center. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." Mark, even facing decades in prison, he couldn't let go. I typed back a simple response, "Yes, it is." Then I blocked the number. Looking out at the city below, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Mark had seen my competence as a threat to his authority, my diligence as an obstacle to his schemes. He tried to destroy me with a single command, "Shut down your workstation." But in his arrogance, he'd forgotten that when you tell someone to shut down a system, you better understand what that system does. He'd handed me the loaded gun, pointed it at his own head, and ordered me to pull the trigger. I'd simply followed orders. The Meridian dashboard on my screen showed all green lights. The system was stable, secure, and thriving under proper management. Our clients were happy, our team was motivated, and the company was stronger than ever. Mark's empty chair in the federal courthouse would soon be filled by him in an orange jumpsuit. The man who thought he was untouchable would spend the next 2 decades being very touchable indeed by federal guards, prosecutors, and the weight of his own choices. I raised my coffee mug, the one the team had given me, in a mock toast to the empty air. Here's to following orders, Mark. Here's to documenting everything. And here's to the beautiful irony that your own command became your destruction. The city lights began to twinkle as evening approached. Somewhere out there, in a federal holding facility, Mark Harrison was learning that real power doesn't come from titles or intimidation. It comes from competence, integrity, and the wisdom to know that in the digital age, the person who controls the system controls everything. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply doing exactly what you're told. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate justice and sweet revenge. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of how one IT engineer turned her boss's arrogance into his downfall, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever dealt with a toxic boss like Mark? How did you handle it? I read every comment and would love to hear your own stories of workplace karma. Until next time, remember, document everything and always get it in writing.